Governor Abba Yusuf of Kano State have sent an appeal to Supreme Court concerning the verdict of the appeal court actually sacking him as the governor of the state, and we're seeing that protests have actually rocked the town as a lot of supporters of the governor are actually out there to show their support to him. The program is the Dailies, where we keep you updated with all the happenings and currents that are happening in the paper. I am Sadela Shadasham. I'll be doing the program together with Rachel Tanzi. Good morning,
Morning,
Rachel.
Celia.
All right, to our viewers at home, remember you can be part of the program by joining us live on Facebook and on YouTube, and then drop your comment as well of any of the story that is of interest to you. And we will be starting with the first paper, which is the Vanguard newspaper.
On the Vanguard newspaper, federal government to drive tax through enforcement of laws. Why I deserve to be listed in Guinness World Records, a statement coming from Tinubu. You can find details of his statement on page 9. Apapa gridlock, truckers defy Sanwo-Olu's directive, return and block road. Alleged procurement fraud, ex-CBN Governor Emefiele gets 300 million naira bill. You can find details on page 9. And on 2023, we have Edo, Ebonyi, and Anambra top list of electoral offenders. More details can be found on page 9. Ondo political crisis, intervene now. Fashoranti Fale orders tell Tinubu. You can find more details on page 10. The big story on the paper, we have we stand by our verdict sacking Governor Yusuf, coming from the appeal court in Kano. The writer under the story saying NNPP files appeal at Supreme Court, wants NJC to probe appeal court judgment, and says CTC confirms its candidate Yusuf won on appeal. There's no confusion. A statement coming from APC demands CTC of appeal court judgment. We have the appeal court registrar dismisses controversy trailing CTC of judgment, says it's clerical error, and then protest rock Kano State. You can find all the details on page 5. And on the Hamas and Israel conflict, it has gone from war to terrorism, coming from Pope Francis. You can find details on page 8. And then we have picture stories where we can see at Zenith Bank Tech Fair, where we can see CEOs and then stakeholders of Zenith Bank. This happened yesterday in the Victoria Island in Lagos. And we also have that of the Senate President, and President Akpabio receives NNPCL management. And that's all the news on the Vanguard newspaper.
On Daily Sun newspaper, talking about fuel, we have supply to last beyond Christmas. Kyari tells Senate Akpabio pledges support for the NNPLC. You can find detail of that story on page 25. Oshun, Edo, Anambra, Kano top 2023 electoral offenders list. With the writer following that story saying 187 lawyers, 16 stands to begin prosecution of suspect, 1,076 arrested in 35 states. Detail of all the stories can be found on page 6. Also, we have federal government moves to unlock $300 billion in deed capital via land reforms. Former CBN Governor Emefiele gets 300 million naira bill. And then also on the Kanu Guba, NNPP protest urges NJC to review the court ruling, with the writer here saying appeal court admits clerical error in judgment body. Pressure on justices responsible for the typographical error, says APC. Police fuel protest. You can find more of the story on page 27. Court declares Buhari appointment of FCC's chairman secretary unlawful. You can find that story on page 5. Also, we're seeing Nigeria facing worst economic crisis, says the reps. You can find detail on page 6. And we have two picture story. One, we can see where the Senate President received the NNPCL yesterday, and also another, we are seeing a meeting that held at the launch of the Ubatu Tribe Wallet and Gift Token in Lagos yesterday. You can do well to grab the paper, read more detail of any of the story that is of interest to you.
On Daily Independent newspaper, Minister seeks UN support to reform Nigeria's correctional service. vows to sack high-handed officers. Tinubu's government poised to provide lifeline for MSMEs. This is a statement coming from the First Lady. The big story on the paper, CTC judgment dispute. NNPP asks NJC to probe appeal court ruling on Kano Guba poll. We have the writer under the story saying APC links misreading of judgment to typographical errors. Protest breaks out in Kano over appeal court's judgment, CTC, and then appeal court admits clerical error to correct it as appropriate. Federal High Court CJ releases new posting for judges. Alleged 1.6 billion naira fraud, Emefiele secures 300 million naira bill. Trial begins November 28. FAAC shares 906.955 billion naira among federal government, states, local government for October. 2 grandmothers, 4,590 others graduate from legal skill acquisition programs. You can find details on page 6. Senate OKs 2024 to 2026 MTEF others probe into tax waivers. You can start with the details on the front page and continue on page 29. And at the downside of the paper, Tinubu returns to Abuja after 5 days trip to Germany. More details can be found on page 29, and that's all the news on Daily Independent.
On the leadership newspaper, still on the issue of Kano State, parties asked to return judgment copies. You can find more detail of that story, the back and forth concerning that election. Also here we're seeing lawyers demand merit in selection of Supreme Court justices, warn against sacrificing competence for politics and nepotism, confirm unwritten code in selection process. And the big story here, we can see Kanu stands still for Governor Abba Kabir Yusuf on arrival from Abuja. He was in the bus and we can see his supporters, and the back and forth is becoming unwarranted. Well, we hope that all of this will not lead to a crisis or whatsoever. You can do well to grab the leadership and read more detail of any of the story that is of interest to you. Let's take a look at the next paper, Rachel.
On Nigerian Tribune, starting with the big story, we have appeal court cites clerical error in CTC as youth protest in Kano State. NNPP heads for Supreme Court asks NJC to probe controversial CTC. Our victory upheld, APC insists. More details can be found on page 2. Industrial Court restrains Ocean judges from taking up acting CJ position. Ocean judicial workers declare indefinite strike. Police officer killed as army police clash in Adamawa, CP films. Alleged 1.21 billion naira procurement fund. Court grants Emefiele 300 million naira bail. Details can be found on page 4. Suspended Adamawa wreck in Niger Republic, council tells court. Remember, some months back it was told that he has fled the country. Now report is having that he is in Niger Republic. You can find details on page 5. Senate 6 probe into $500 million CCTV contract in FCT. Poor nutrition can damage child's brain, coming from a nutritionist, and I believe parents should take this report seriously. You can find details on page 5. ECOWAS Parliament seeks review of sanctions on Niger Republic. And from FAAC, federal government, states and local government councils share 906.9 billion naira for October allocation. Federal government plans 75 billion naira loan to 1.5 million poor Nigerians as First Lady launches market money again. And I hope that this time around it will be different from the past administration, and that a lot of market people will get it. And of course, it shouldn't be the 10,000. It should be something higher and way better. And it shouldn't just stop at the Pacific region, because in the past, I mean, it barely got to the north. It just remained at the west and the southeast and all of that. It never really spread across Nigeria totally. So I just hope that this time around, this market money will truly be different. And that's all the news on Nigerian Tribune.
The market, you get to ask how did they come about this, and just like you're saying, the money should go around. Now, my more concern is Senate seeking to probe into the $500 million CCTV contract in the FCT.
Yeah.
This is a contract that they have been probing. It's not just last year, Rachel. This is the CCTV that's supposed to have been probed earlier before now.
Yeah.
And we keep asking questions whereby we disburse money, we don't follow up, we don't check, are those CCTV even functioning? Did they even buy the CCTV in the first place?
Yeah.
Here we are actually, asking our governors why they have to spend certain money for certain things that do not make sense, such as photo frame, such as vegetables,
Fragrances.
and many other things that really
Yes.
do not make sense.
Extinguishers, Celia.
You get it,
Yeah.
Rachel. So we now ask question, why will you take money for taxpayers and use it for things that are not necessary? And here we're seeing that Senate are seeking probe. I just hope that they are not just seeking, but a committee will be set, and the committee should be given a time frame where they will come back with a
Yes.
report. And after that report, we should see a follow-up. People who were involved in that, if that contract was not really done eventually, they should face the full wrath of the law or return back
They
our
should,
money.
they should.
Because it's high time we begin to let people to take responsibilities for their action. It's one thing for you to just spend about 2 months or 3 months and then you pay a particular amount of bill. Meanwhile, what you actually earn is much more than that. So I think people need to start facing the consequences of their actions. And that is why we hope that after this probe coming from Senate, we'll see better action, better people. When a contractor is being given a contract, let us see that you do it. That was part of the things the EFCC chairman was talking about.
True.
And that was why he said nobody will be left out when it comes to probing issues like this, when it comes to money, because we don't even have the money in the first place. So why spend it recklessly on things that are not even necessary? So let's wait and see what this probe will come up with as they actually set up the committee eventually and all of that.
Celia, I need to lay emphasis on the fact that it's not 500 million naira, it's dollars. We're looking at, Celia. This is a huge sum of money. This is almost the money we borrowed from the center and from the World Bank, $700 million. This is just a little bit less than it is, just $200 million to make it 700 million, and we can't account for it. It's really sad because we have a loan that is this much from the World Bank that we're to pay in 25 years. We haven't even seen that money being used yet.
Disbursed. We have 30% interest.
We have, yes, we have interest on top of this loan, debt servicing, left, right, center. And then we're seeing that $500 million went into a CCTV contract and it cannot be accounted for. It's really sad. And I just hope that truly something is being done about these things. And we shouldn't joke about it, because this is a good enough money that by now the FCT should have had a good amount of CCTV mounted all around, and then of course it will improve security, and before we know it, this kind of security upgrade will start spreading across the country. But when it fails at the Federal Capital Territory, how do we expect to see success being achieved in other states, or other states mimicking it? And then I just hope that this doesn't go on, but that we know the contractors, and this probe doesn't just end as probe, but follow up, and then the necessary actions taken when digging have been done. Yes,
of course, Rachel. Let's take a look at the Punch newspaper. Niger Juta sues Tinubu and ECOWAS court rules December 7. Niger Juta sues Tinubu, ECOWAS court rules December 7. You can find more of that story on page 3. Fresh Naira crisis hit Kano, Sokoto, Edo, and others. You tend to ask, what is the question, despite the fact that the CBN have said, let the money go round. I mean, they are not stopping anybody. No old currency will be taken away. So we wonder why we're still having Naira scarcity. Well, we hope that more probe will be doing to find out what is responsible for all of this crisis going on here, or the scarcity, rather, that is going on in this state. Still on the Punch newspaper, federal government slashes wage award by 100 billion naira, labor kicks. You can find more of that in the paper. Federal government slashes wage award by 100 billion naira, labor kicks. We hope that this will not tempt labor to go on strike because the wage was being slashed. You can follow up that story on page 30. Rachel, I don't know if you have something to say about that story.
I mean, Stella, why would the federal government slash it? The labor refused to go on strike. I mean, went on many warnings, trying, refused to give you enough long rope, kept on waiting, and finally you're still slashing it. I mean, Isn't the federal government just telling Nigerians we don't care about your whatever is going on, and at the same time telling labor you can do your worst? Because imagine after giving this long rope dialogue, left, right, center, giving your demands, having meetings, sitting down, the federal government assuring you we will start doing this, and then they slash it into half, and then you just wonder, I mean, whose fault will it be tomorrow, Sally, honestly, if labor decides to go on a strike after this long group, and yet the federal government is slashing it? And guess what? It's not only the slashing, a lot of people are not seeing it yet. So it's not only the slashing, but is it getting to everybody? Is it getting to
Because this money
everybody?
is supposed to be salary starting from October.
Exactly. How many people have seen it? How many people would have said it reflected in their October salary, and then for November they're going to see it and all of that? So I just hope the government of Nigeria, Sele, wakes up and shows us, its citizens, that they really mean the best for us, and that they're not just toiling with our emotions and the hardship we're going through, because it's not easy and it's not funny. And then if labor keeps giving you a long rope, and still at that you are not diligent to come through for them as you have promised, then it just says there's just so much message in between the line, and then it's really sad. And I don't think this should come. There shouldn't be any slash in the first place by the
You've said
federal
it all. I don't
government.
think I have more to add, but I just hope that the federal government would do the right thing by
Yes.
labor. Let's look at other stories still on the Punch newspaper. The big story on Kano poll controversy, where we are having police and NPP protesters clash, more cloud over judgment, where the rider called APC blamed clerical error and NPP Labour Party insists judgment doctored. Yusuf heads for Supreme Court, says appeal court lacks jurisdiction to determine party membership. You can find more of that story in the paper. And we're having Fitiri intervenes as soldier killed inspector in Adamawa. You can find more detail. You can see a picture of what actually happened. You read more of that on page 4 and 5. Senate passes the MTEF to probe tax waivers by under Buhari. Senate passes MTEF to probe tax waivers under Buhari. You can find detail on page 21. Police tear gas protesters shield Oshun Chief Justice for MOP. You can find more of the story in the paper. Also, we're having 1.2 billion naira fraud. Emefiele gets 300 million naira bill restricted to Abuja. The detail of that story can be found on page 28, and that's all on the Punch newspaper.
On Voice of Liberty, again, courts grant Emefiele 300 million naira bail. And in Adamawa, inspector dies as soldiers officers clash at the police headquarters. 14 trillion naira contingent liabilities. House of Reps indict NPA, NNPC, and others. The big story on the paper in Kano State: protest over appeal court verdict sacking Governor Yusuf as court admits clerical error in judgment. CTC. We have protests brought Kano yesterday following the sacking of Governor Abba Yusuf by an appeal court, which admitted to a clerical error in its judgment certificate through copy. In Nasarawa State, also, appeal court delivers judgment on governorship election today. Israel-Hamas conflict has gone from war to terrorism, a statement from Pope Francis. And the FCT have saved over 110 billion naira for Nigerians in less than 3 months, coming from Minister Wiki. At the downside of the paper, economic reforms, I deserve recognition by Guinness World Records. This is a statement from President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. You can find details inside the paper, and that's all the news on Voice of Liberty.
Richard, I would like to add up to the story concerning the appeal court delivering the judgment the governor's election today, that the appeal court will please do Nigerians a favor to be fair.
Yes.
That the appeal court should please do this judgment as much as they should remember the oath they swore before getting into that seat, because a lot of things are happening. It seems the shaking is affecting the nation presently,
Yes.
Rachel. Are we to talk about the tension in Plateau State? Are we going to talk about the protests presently in Kano State? Are we going to talk about what is happening in Zamfara, despite the insurgence that is going on there? A number of things. And yesterday, where we saw Falana and also the former president saying the appeal court should actually be very fair in the judgment, because it's not
They
fair,
should be.
kicking people out. And it's quite obvious from the body language of these various states. You could actually tell who the people of that state want.
Yes.
So rather than let us see, of course, I will agree with the court that they are trying to interpret the law as it should be. But please, they should do it based on their own jurisdiction and not leaving theirs and doing another person's job. Because we've seen it playing out in some of the judgment over these are things that shouldn't even be in the court.
Yes.
Things that should have been solved outside the court before elections, and then they are showing up now. So as we are waiting with our fingers crossed and with our hearts in our mouth, because a lot of people in Nasarawa State right now are just hoping and are trusting that the appeal court will do justice by them. We are hoping that the appeal court will do just that, because once there is tension in Plateau State, tension in Nasarawa, tension in Kano State, Rachel, if care is not taken, something can escalate. And that is why we are hoping, in as much as the governors of these various states are trying to keep peace, telling their citizens to please be calm. I'm just pleading, because yesterday where we saw part of the thing, the chief security chiefs were saying that the judiciary is not even helping matters to some extent. So we are hoping that they will help the matter at this point in time by being fair and doing the right thing. So right now, the eyes of, in fact, Nigerians, not just Nasarawa State, most people's eyes right now is on the court, is on the appeal court, and we hope that they will do the right by people.
You won't even blame the judiciary, seller. If INEC has decided to give them electoral powers, then they are just at the position to just do as it pleases them, and the Nigerians are just left with the chaotic situation and all of that. So we just truly hope that the appeal court and the Supreme Court, whatever level any petition is at the moment at any state, that let the judiciary do us right in this country, because honestly we are tired. We just need to start moving forward. Both the federal government, I mean, for the federal government level, we can say we are striving because now the president has his head in one place. But at the state level, which is the one that is most directly to everybody, it is not funny, because we need to know where we are heading towards, most especially when it comes to our safety as indigents in a particular state. So you let the Supreme Court do the right thing by Nigerians, and then let's start moving forward at the state level.
Right, the judicial system, we are hoping on you. Let's take a look at the Guardian newspaper, starting with a big story talking about poor funding raises concern for 270 new private varsities. More universities, less research output and quality. Where we are seeing the total number of universities may rise to 528, among which 418 are private owned. Between 2018 and 2022, over 5 million candidates who applied for admission were unable to secure placements. Out of 1.8 million candidates who applied in 2022, about 600,000, representing 33.3%, were admitted. Now, this calls for quite a number of questions, looking at the funding of universities, looking at the fact that more people are actually going into the private universities than the private university than the federal university. So this call for what is happening. It still goes down to the funding, and we saw where VCs came out to say they cannot pay the 40% IGR that the federal government is asking them. Polytechnics also say the same thing. I believe that we hear College of Education is also saying the same thing.
Yes.
Because when the federal government is not even paying attention to these universities to fund it, where are you expecting them to even get the money to revenue to actually give to you? Sometimes when you visit, yesterday we were lamenting about the state of a space called a classroom, where we saw students struggling to sit on the floor just to gain education, because as far as we were concerned, no learning was taking place there. It is very, very possible you ask the student, what did you learn? They didn't know anything. All they know is that there was a teacher that came, they went to school, they played, and they're back home. And the same thing, Rachel, when you go to some of our federal universities, the classrooms are not even,
they're not
okay.
Standard,
sometimes you even see students sitting on the shelves, just in a way, just in the windows, congested. A lot of things are happening. And I just hope that the government is looking at this, because sometimes Nigerians are tempted to say it's because your words are not studying in the country. That's why you have no idea what is happening. If only you have an idea if your words are studying in the, federal universities, I mean, we will not see the number. Imagine, out of 528 universities, we are seeing about 418 are private owned, leaving us with how many? Less
Very
than
few.
or 100 or so.
Yes.
So we really need to do something as a country, and I hope that the federal government is looking into that, because we'll now be looking at state universities and also the federal universities. So we hope that both will come together to see how they can improve the university, so that students can actually have good learning going on there.
Yes, Sally, and what this means is that we are going to also in the future be struggling with illiteracy and the lack of educated people, because for now, though, the president might boast to German chancellors and investors concerning us having educated workforce, but it's just a matter of time where we will no longer have that educated workforce, because if we're having over 5 million people, students applying to get admissions into universities, and then they didn't exactly up to that amount of number, like, you should know that we are heading towards somewhere. And by the time tertiary education becomes privatized largely, then what that means also is that education become not accessible as it should be, because it is now very expensive. And what that means is that there will be a lot of dropouts, because we know that when we are looking at private sector, is all about the profit, while when it comes to the government, it's all about subsidizing services for the masses to be able to have access to it. So when the government are failing in creating more and more tertiary universities, giving more and more numbers of people the ability to be able to go to school and be able to find education at a subsidized rate, and then you are allowing these private universities to spring up more, it means within a very short period of time, school in Nigeria will just be for the who and who. And if we get to that point, then we will no longer, in a very short period of time, won't have to brag about any educated workforce, but rather just a populous nation with less and lesser number of educated workforce. But I just hope that, seeing these statistics, the government is waking up, because we've seen what it will take to drop the number of adult school students, how many thousands classrooms are needed, how many schools are needed for the government to create, and also the number of teachers. So if we start from that level up to the tertiary level, we will be able to see a significant amount of improve in our education system. But until then, let's just keep hoping. We see what the Minister of Education is saying concerning 25% more funding into education sector, and we just hope that the government truly stick with their word, so that we will be able to see such numbers declining.
I think richer Nigerians will be satisfied when we see the budget for 2024, how much allocation education has. That is when we know if truly the federal government is serious with funding, if the federal government is really serious about what is happening there, because Nigerians are tempted to say maybe the loan given to the students is a way of adding the tuition fees and all of that. So you give it one hand, you collect with another hand.
Yeah.
It's not about how much school fees you can pay, Rachel, but how about the learning? Are we having our lecturers there? Because they're also leaving the country.
Yeah.
So quite a number of things need to go into. So it's a whole package.
It is.
It's a whole package. Still on the Guardian newspaper, we have tension in Kano over Guba verdict. Asakere Dodo Ayedetiwa crisis rocks Edo State. You can find more detail of that on page 6. Senate laments cyber threat to digital economy, $500 million yearly loss. Court grant Emifele $300 million bill. Other CBN to update CSO on e-Naira. You can find detail on page 4. Over 200 billion Naira exchange rate differential. Okay, I take that. Over 200 billion Naira exchange rate differential pushes the FEC disbursement to 906.96 billion Naira. And then we have Adelebu aviation safety and prolificacy of public officials. It's an editorial you can find on page 12. And we have few picture story. We've seen the first one already, where we are seeing where the Senate President was together with the NNPCL pledging that there will be sufficient petrol that will last till after Christmas. And then we're seeing Governor Bura of Rivers opens 2 world-class health facilities. This is really applaudable. We hope more governors will do that. And that's all on the Guardian newspaper.
On the Matrix newspaper, traffic congestion costs Lagos 4 trillion naira annually. This is a report. You can find details on page 3. And on 2026 World Cup qualifiers, we have Awaziem tips Super Eagles to get qualifying campaign back on track. Akeredolu Aiyedatiwa fueled Afenifere weight in 6 Tinubu's intervention. Crisis, absence of the governor affecting governance in the state. The big story, Kano Guba poll controversy continues. Governor Yusuf, NNPP, head to Supreme Court over appeal court's judgment. Falana false contradiction as appeal court blames typo error for confusion. Protests break out in Kano over Yusuf sacking. Senate approves MTEF for 2024 to 2026, sets 700 naira per dollar exchange rate. FAAC shares 906.96 billion naira among federal government, states, and local government areas in October. Naira weakened against the dollar as intraday high reaches 1,121 naira to a dollar. You can find details on page 11. And we have DSTV Go TV subscription hike. Rep weighed in, asks NBS to dialogue will multi-choice. I believe the reps have sat down on this for too long, and this intervention should have been decades ago, ever since multi-choice stepped foot into Nigeria. But it's not too late, and I just hope that the reps are strict about this thing, because if you look at the services in Nigeria and the services multi-choice is able to provide in other African countries, then you know that multi-choice is exploiting Nigerians. And it's because the government have kept quiet. It's because the MBC rather has kept quiet and have allowed it to go on for so long. Other countries have the options of pay-per-view, and Nigeria don't have pay-per-view, and we don't consume all of these channels, and yet multi-choice just keeps increasing the packages with just few channels and giving us outrageous prices. I just hope that the reps sit down. It's about time, because the exploitation, the extortion from multi-choice is too much, and we deserve packages and options that other African countries are getting, because whether we like it or not, we are consuming your services to the fullest, and therefore we deserve other options other than what multi-choice is making available to us when it comes to DSTV and Go TV. You can start with the details on the front page and continue on page 8. Nigeria may lose $450 billion to climate change. This is a report and a picture story showing welcome back home, Mr. President. President Bola Tinubu being welcomed back to Abuja yesterday by some top officials after attending the G20 Compact Summit in Germany. And that's all the news on the Matrix newspaper.
Well, Richard, beyond reps meeting, I think maybe we should do what South Africa did. We no longer need multi-choice. Maybe let's start thinking of what we can do. Let's start having more creative industry. I mean, we saw yesterday they had a meeting with the creative industry, also had a meeting together with the Ministry of Youth and Creativity. So let us start doing something. Netflix was complaining, right? So a lot of people are beginning to complain. So I think this should be an eye-opener for us, except if we are claiming to be rich
and
that
not.
we can access it, and we are not. There was a time we had a Senate president that said we should not deceive ourselves. We are poor in the country. A lot of Nigerians were angry with that, but it's the truth.
That is the truth.
So why flaunt yourself that you have all that it takes when you do not have? So let's hope that after this meeting, something will change, or else I think it's high time we do the right thing by also having something that's indigenous to us, and then we know that the money is still coming back into the country. Well, Rachel, let's take a break at this moment. Let the viewers also, chip in their own views about what they feel about quite a number of things. Today, the appeal court will be giving their own judgment on Nasarawa State governorship election. Also, we have that of Kano, where protest is going on presently because the people feel that maybe the court is not being fair to them. quite a number of stories on the paper. The president is back into the country after the G20 conference are held in Germany. So a number of stories for you to actually air your views on. So when we come back, we'll open the phone lines. Please stay tuned with us.
Make your everyday informative, make your everyday count. Know your world, daily affairs, national and international, with authentic news events as they unfold on Global News and Zoomer Nigeria, Monday to Friday at 1 p.m.
Thank you for staying tuned. Still the Dailies. We have been looking at a number of stories on the paper, ranging from the president is back into the country after a 5-day trip to Germany, where he is trying to woo investors into the country. And we hope that that summit and that conference was very, very impactful, because we're hoping to see move in the energy and gas sector and also in the power sector. Also on the paper, we're seeing the issue of the talking about appeal court giving their ruling on Nasarawa State governorship election today, and also protests have rocked Kano State, as a lot of people are feeling maybe the judgment was not fair. And also we're seeing the issue of the Adamawa wreck. He's presently in Niger Republic, so we hope that he gets back into the country and face the wrath of the law for what he did there. We have quite a number of stories on the paper. We'd love to hear what your own views are about the story. The number is on your screen. Remember to turn down the volume of your TV set when you call us so we can hear you clearly. I still have Rachel Tens with me in the studio. Thank you so much,
You're
Rachel.
welcome, Sally.
All right, before the calls come in, let's take a look at New Telegraph newspaper. Climate change risks. Nigeria faces $5.5 billion lost in asset. You can find detail of that inside the New Telegraph newspaper. Federal government earned 1.3 trillion naira as IGR operating surplus in 2022 FRC. More of that can be found on page 8. Court admits Emefiele to 300 million naira bill. Ordered CBN to disclose info on e-naira technical partners to the HEDA. You can find that on page 3 and 8. Federal government seek UN support on correctional service reform. You can find more in the paper. And on the issue of the Ondo crisis, Fatoranti urges Tinubu Ganduji to reconcile Akeredolu and his deputy. Middlebelt Forum to Tinubu give military free-hand equipment to tackle insurgents. More of that can be found in the paper. And the big story, Nigeria faces worst economic crisis in history, coming from Abdullahi, says there is a need for National Assembly Committee, federal government to work out ways to get economic back on track. Also, we have oil theft, greatest threat to Nigeria's economy, coming from Abbas. More of that can be found on page 4 and 5. Still a New Telegraph on Guber verdict. Kanu governor files 10 grounds of appeal at Supreme Court. As the appeal court admits clerical error in judgment, protests rocked the city as NNPP APC insists on victory. Senate to federal government ban importation of items manufactured in Nigeria. Stop all weavers. All right, let's take this call. Hello.
Good morning, Fele and Rachel.
Good morning, Mr. Sharma.
Honestly speaking, I have my concern about the educational issue of Nigeria. New universities are underfunding. New universities are having insecurities. I don't know where we are going in this country. Most of these new universities, they don't have securities. There's issues of kidnapping here and there, and they are underfunding. Then which one would they face? Would they face issue of finances, or would they face issue of security? And this government or Nigeria continue to approve new universities that they cannot even fund. What a shame. Why are we treating ourselves like this? And that's the reason why the bandits or the terrorists call education haram, because they call the education haram in the reason that there's not any reason why we should go to school. And government is backing up by their conduct and attitude. Is that how we continue in this country? I pray Tinubu will stop jetting out. Though he's going out, if it's for the good of this country, let him continue. But if he's just going out, for him to come back and rest and go back again, and nothing comes on the Nigerian to feel the impact, then he should be careful. We are advising that we elected him to be a governor, a president, or lead this country aright. Not a president that will be getting out of this country and will come back with nothing tangible for the country to benefit. Enough of our suffering in this country. There's nothing that one can feel that is going right in this country. Be it finances, be it security, be it whatever. Nation is sharing us at their faces, and nothing comes out of government in terms of talking with this all kind of situation. I say that he will get it right. I would like to claim the book of records that he said was right. Because given book of records does not write ugly things. He writes things that are good. I say that God was being to in Jesus' name. Good morning, my sisters.
Thank you so much.
A blessed day.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shomo. Good morning.
All right, still a New Telegraph newspaper where we are seeing Senate to federal government ban importation of items manufactured in Nigeria, stop all waivers not linked to NGOs, probe tax waiver from 2015 to date. You can find more detail on page 3. 2 grandmothers, 4,590 other graduates from Lagos Skill Acquisition Center. ECOWAS MP seek lifting of ban on Niger. You can find detail on page 5. And we have a study that links eating ultra-processed foods to mouth throat cancer. More detail found on page 7. And that's all a New Telegraph newspaper.
On First News newspaper, re-election, Obuku NDDC MD congratulates Diwi. Tension in Kano as appeal court insists Governor Yusuf remains sacked. The writer saying blames discrepancies in judgment CTC on clerical error, police tear gas concourses protesting supporters. Fresh dust over contradictory CTC as Kano governors, lawyers lock horns with judges.
Hello.
Yes, my concern in this concern is about security. You see, they say, let's listen to lie. And then our judiciary are really causing confusion in this country. If we allow this to continue, then this country will be in place. You see, Justin is in a state of extension in Just. Then, after Just, Kano is boiling. Why? Because of the judiciary. Then, Nasarawa State, there is also tension. They should remember that if there's any soul that is lost because of their inactivity to do what is expected for them to do, the blood of those that will die, this inferno, will be on their necks. Please, the judiciary should take care about passing judgment. When they pass judgment that is not in agreement with the masses, there will be tension and people will die. And for every blood that is spilled off, there should be held responsible. So please and please, my regards. What I'm suggesting is the lawyers should do the right thing that is expected in this country. Please, we have enough problems that is disturbing us. They should not be bringing another one, bringing problems from a situation that is going to cause a lot of problem for us. That is my take, man. Thank you.
Alright,
Thank you
you
very
so
much for
And I
that
think that was
contribution.
an advice to everybody in Natural State to be calm.
Yes.
And we believe that whatever the judgment will be, just like we've said, they will judge in favor of what the people to protect their mandate eventually.
Still on First News newspaper, police disperse protesting Ocean judiciary workers as union declares strike. Court grants ex-CBN Governor Emefiele 300 million naira bill. Cross River Guba Appeal Court upholds Governor Otu's victory. Lakpobiri pledges full support for expansion plans of Walter Smith Refinery. And the Nasarawa Guba Appeal Court delivers judgment today. Senate urges Wike to probe $500 million CCTV contract in FCT. EFCC arraigns 3 other alleged diversion of 97 million naira cocoa beans. And we have toxicology on Mohbad's body ongoing in US coming from the coroner. And on coup concern, ECOWAS parliamentarians want Niger sanctions lifted. And that's all the news on First News newspaper.
On the Blueprint newspaper, Senate to probe issuance of tax waiver from 2015 to date. You can find that on page 5. Troops rescue 31 persons kidnapped in Sokoto State. Interior Minister canvasses UN reform on correctional service. Also, we have APC dissolve Rivers ESCO. Okocha head 7-member caretaker committee. You can find more on page 5. As protests rock Kanu over appeal court verdict, APC and NPP differ on way out of the CTC error. Here we have lawyers familiar with clerical error, party legal advisor, part of the writer of that story. And NPP says appellate court can't correct mistakes. Seek the NJC judicial stakeholder intervention. Detail of all that can be found on page 6. And we have Kavi Alliance invests $2.3 billion on immunization in Nigeria, pledges massive intervention in nation's health sector. We detailed in the paper. Federal government assures U.S. of commitment to press freedom. Also, we have fatal auto crash claim 17 in Niger State. Very sad story. You can find more on page 15. Jaiz Bank appoints Haruna Musa as the MD and CEO of the bank. Detail found on page 23. And that's all on the Blueprint newspaper.
On the Nation newspaper, Fasoran T. Fale orders intervene in Akeredolu Ayedatiwa feud. 2024 26 trillion naira budget, federal government target 7.8 trillion naira loan. Haruna Musa takes office as Jaiz Bank MD and CEO. NNPCL allays fears of petrol shortage ahead of Yellitude. You can find details of both stories on page 7. First Lady inaugurates market money scheme. Emefiele gets 300 million naira bill. Trial of 191 electoral offences suspects to begin. Ebonyi, Edo, and Anambra have highest number of suspects. The big story on the Nation, appeal court lays to rest Kano judgment, CTC controversies. You can start with the details on the front page and continue on page 4. Inspector killed in policemen-soldiers clash. And then federal government, state council share 906 billion naira FAAC allocation. You can find details on page 7, and that's all the news on the Nation newspaper.
From the world of business on Business Day newspaper, Nigerian food system under growing strain. You can find detail of that story in the paper. Better traffic behavior can save Lagos 4 trillion naira yearly, this is a report. Money market rate spike since Cardoso took over the CBN. Also mentoring a catalyst for SMEs development in Nigeria. This is coming from Peter Bakole. Also, we have the big story that says NLNG dividends to NNPP hit 8-year high. Output decline threatening record revenue. With detail of the story found in the paper. We still have feature stories in the front. We can see the president with the African Development President and other stakeholders during the meeting over there in Germany. And then we also have another story downside of the paper. You can do well to grab the business there and read more detail of the story that is of interest to you.
On Sporting Sun newspaper, the big story, Sevilla moves to upstage Barca for Ndidi. You can find details on page 6. Rufai tips Super Eagles to bounce back. You can find details on page 6. Osimhen hits Jim doubtful for Atlanta. Could be ready for Real Madrid. We have court stops Ronaldo's 2010 hush money settlement. Griezmann rejects Man United advances. We have Varane to leave Man U next summer. Everton to demand £60 million for Onana. You can find details inside the paper. Luke Shaw returns to Man United training after 3 months. You can find more details on page 2. Ancelotti, Real Madrid discussing new contract. Lewandowski to Messi I take that story again. Lewandowski to miss Euro 2024 qualifiers. You can find details at the back page. And we have LeBron James makes history, becomes first NBA player to eclipse 39,000 career points. You can find details at the back page, and that's all news on Sporting Sun newspaper.
Well, that's how far we can go on the program this morning. Thank you, Rachel, for doing this with me. Thank you to our callers who call on the program. We're truly grateful for your comments and your impact on the program this morning. And also thank you to our crew member and every other person that have been a lover and a supporter of Equa Television. Until we come here again, do have a blessed day ahead.